So before you start, what you need to do is everything that you touch, absolutely everything, the Bunsen burners, the sides, door handles, anything that you're going to be using needs to be sterilised with Virkon. Everything that you touch, to decontaminate everything, because you don't want to be contaminating your agar plates. That's your assessment criteria. You need to produce plates that are free from contamination. This is known as the aseptic technique, which is what you need to include for your coursework 1. You need to talk about what it is, you need to talk about why it's important, not just in this lab setting, but you can briefly, don't forget you've only got 800 words, you can briefly go into detail about why it's not just important in a classroom setting, but why it's important in a healthcare setting. What's the point of decontamination? So bacteria and fungi sometimes, but mainly bacteria, are cultured or grown. So you need to be using these keywords in your assignment. So you need to be using cultured, not grown. In media, okay, the agar that we use is a medium that contains nutrients and things that the bacteria requires to grow. We use normal agar, but there is numerous different types of agar. There's blood agar, there's loads of different types of agar that help to grow different types of bacteria. Okay? So what do you think are the basic requirements for a bacteria to grow? Warmth, which is why once we've done the plates today, they'll be incubated normally for 24 to 48 hours, but in your case, they'll be incubated for a week, because we don't see you for another week. But yes, incubation, so warm. Anything else? Moisture. If you look on the plates, there's moisture already. They've got moisture in the agar. Anything else? Any other nutrients? Needs to respire, don't forget. Needs to grow. Okay, so all the nutrients that are prepared for that. Okay, so there's some basic requirements for each of the agar, and you can research them and add certain key points in. Don't forget 800 words, keep it short and sweet. So aseptic techniques, also known as sterile techniques, sometimes known, in which the operating equipment are kept free from microorganisms. This is why you're going to be using Virkon, V-I-R-K-O-N, to sterilise everything. Absolutely everything. And that will prevent contamination, 1, to the bacterial culture, and 2, to your surrounding environment, and to prevent contamination on your agar plates. Okay? So this is what you need to do. You need to prevent the contamination of the slides, so you need to make sure that there is no contamination on these agar plates come next week. You need to sterilise all apparatus before use to prevent initial contamination. Don't forget that the technicians have made these samples, so you can talk about that in your lab report. You can talk about you have to rely upon the technicians to keep these plates sterile. You have to rely on technicians to make sure this liquid culture has also been sterilised. The bottles have been sterilised. You have to rely on everything in terms of that, in terms of preparation from them. So you can't change that. So sometimes, I think it was 1 bottle last year, one of these bottles was contaminated. Rather than saying to you, right, you can't write that up, it wasn't an error on your part in terms of your practice in the lab, we said, right, you can write it up, explain why that's happened, explain that it's out of your control, and evaluate how you would change it. So what would you do if you could create that medium? How would you keep that sterile? How would you keep it uncontaminated? So you can talk about that if the case arises again. Okay. So this is the process you will go through. You will need to sterilise the work surface before and after an experiment. These use Lysol, but we use Virkon here. You need to use a correct handling technique to prevent the contamination of personnel and the immediate environment by the organisms being cultured. What do you think those are? What do you think the correct handling techniques are? Discuss in your pairs. Come up with a few. Correct handling techniques. Write them down.
Gloves, yeah. these glasses, how do they call? Gobblers?
Gobblers.
Gobblers. That's more like a monster.
But would that be like handling, or that's personal equipment, personal protective equipment?
Right, that's true.
Well, I mean, the use of personal protective equipment could be one of the ways to.
Yeah.
Any ideas? Handling techniques? Wash your hands. Crucial. That's what you'll do first. Wash your hands. Then what else will you do? What else? You've got wash your hands. Will you put gloves on? See, some people say yes when you're handling the bottle of culture, others will say no because you're using a Bunsen burner. Can you imagine if the plastic you wash your hand? So there is arguments about the use of gloves, particularly when touching culture, because we should technically use gloves when handling the broths, the liquid broths, but can we use gloves when we're using a Bunsen burner that's on throughout the experiment? The reason the Bunsen burners remain on throughout the experiment, does anyone know?
Oh, to provide the
No. The Bunsen burner acts as a vacuum. So what happens is any bacteria, obviously we know there's bacteria everywhere, we know there's all over the sides, all over our hands and so on, and you can just harmless bacteria, you can't get away from them. What the Bunsen burner does is it acts as a vacuum. It sucks up all the contaminants, all the bacteria, and takes it up rather than onto the surface that you're working. So the Bunsen burner acts as a vacuum to eliminate contamination to the area that you're working in. That's why it's remaining. That's why it's kept on throughout the experiment. So wash your hands. I'll put potential to wear gloves when handling liquid cultures. The liquid cultures that you'll be using today are E. coli. There should be 2 or 3. E. coli, Bacillus subtilis, Micrococcus luteus, and Staphylococcus albicans.
When you say using gloves when touching them, means that we need to, when we open them, or that
I will show you a
touching
technique of how you'll do it without wearing gloves. I will show you a technique how to do that.
So if that would E. coli being like got on your hand in?
No, it's harmless, harmless strain. No. None of them will causing you any harm. If it did, for whatever reason, transfer into your mouth, no, you'll be fine. The ones that we'll be using today, so the ones that you'll be using for your experiment, so these are liquid cultures. So these contain the bacterium in liquid form. Okay, this is where you will take a sample from for your agar plates. So you've got E. coli, Bacillus subtilis. What shape would that be? Bacillus?
rod.
Yeah, well done.
I do listen.
No, you did. Micrococcus luteus. Shape?
Round.
Yeah, round, spherical. And what shape would that be? Round, yeah. Spherical. But they'd be in a clump together. Staphylococcus would be staph means clump, coccus means round. So the 4 potential ones. Don't do all 4. I'd probably aim, I don't know how many slides we've got, but I would aim to do 2, like 2 each. Maybe both for different bacteria, and then obviously if you make an error of for whatever reason one comes back contaminated, you can use a different one. So I'd aim to do 2 each. Luteus, L-U-T-E-U-S. E-U-S. This is the procedure, this is the method you will need for your lab report. So far, what do we use street plating for? Tell me what we use it for?
STIs.
Could, yeah, we could. So to identify type of bacteria. And then once we've identified type of bacteria, we know how to treat it. So identification. What's the correct handling techniques? Give me some examples. Wash your hands. What about surfaces? Clean all sides down, yeah. So we're trying, obviously we're not doing it in an actual lab setting, but if we were, we'd be trying to identify the types of bacteria. We wouldn't know there's E. coli. We'd have swabbed someone's mouth or someone's skin or something, and we'd be creating an agar plate of an unknown bacteria. We wouldn't have a list that says, oh, this is E. coli, because we'd know how to treat it straight away. This process is used to identify bacteria. Okay, this is what you need for your assignment 1. This is the method that you will need to write up in your lab report. Okay? So the first step